Perfect. So, you've recently published your new book, Finding Belle. Can you explain to me why that title?
The title, Finding Belle, is meant to give the reader a clue as to what the story is. So it's a coming-of-age novel. It's a family saga about a young girl. She starts off in the novel as a young girl who's in the middle of a difficult marriage. Her parents are at war. Her mother is Belle, and Belle is East African Indian, in fact. She's beautiful. She's quite distant, and she's very troubled, increasingly troubled. And the little girl's father is blonde, blue-eyed, very charismatic and adorable, and also very vain. And it's about what happens within this family, and it's about the little girl growing up and her finding Belle.
Amazing. So, this is your debut novel. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I finally had the time to write it during lockdown in 2020. I was still working because journalists were key workers then, but I wasn't doing anything else really, or not very much else. I'd always wanted to write a novel, and various things conspired against me. And then eventually in 2020, when I had the time, I thought, well, it's now or never. And crucially, I had an idea. I had the germ of an idea. And I developed it during that year, and then over time that followed, and eventually it became a sort of labour of love. A lot of labour, a lot of love.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. That's such a well said answer. As a journalist, I can imagine you're always reporting facts. What inspired you to write fiction?
Well, I've always been a reader. When I was a child, I was a bookworm. And I did a literature degree. I did English and French. My family is surrounded by books. My husband, he's retired now, but he taught English at university. My children are all very literary. So it was a sort of natural thing to do, really.
Amazing. So it's in your blood, really?
It's in our blood. My blood, our blood.
Mm-hmm. As you said, the book surrounds themes of betrayal, passion and family. What do you think people will take from this book, or what would you hope that people would take?
There's quite a lot going on in the book. Although it's a domestic story, there are lots of themes in it. It's a novel of retrospection. It's a little girl growing up and understanding that what she thought was true as a child was not necessarily the truth. It's a story about mothers and daughters, but also fathers and daughters. It's about migration and its complexities. Belle, of the title, is an East African Asian, so her family has migrated twice, first from India to East Africa, and then she herself from East Africa to Britain. And Mivie is mixed race, so these are themes that are there in the novel. But there's also a good old-fashioned secret in Finding Belle that hopefully keeps the reader turning the pages.
Why do you think it's so important to spread these stories about migration?
I think human beings are all storytellers. We tell each other stories all the time, don't we? Friendships are formed of stories, you know, the stories we tell about each other or about ourselves to each other. The news is also about stories. I narrate stories every day in the newsroom. But what I've done with this book is used imagination, creation. I've played with language. I've used words in a way that I can't do in the newsroom. I can hint, I can suggest, I can use irony. And stories of migration are as important as all other stories, but maybe haven't been told all that much. And for someone like me, who is the product of a diaspora, an Indian diaspora, it's the sort of story that just came naturally.
That's so well fitting for the book, I suppose. You know, you take your own experiences and you put it in as you say, it's a book about family relationships. What sort of responses have you had from the book that's really stuck with you?
I've had by and large very good responses. Sometimes people have read the novel and then reinterpreted it for me in a way that I hadn't quite realised. They'll take a section of it and say how much that reflected the overall themes of the book, and I'll think, yes, fantastic. I've been advised by my publisher not to read too many reviews though, because inevitably there will be some bad ones, and they're the ones that stick with you, which is so unfair, isn't it? But by and large it's been a really positive response.
Incredible. As a journalist and now author, what is your main goal for the future of your writing?
Well, there is a book 2. It's not linked to Finding Belle. It's not a sequel in any way. It's a book about an artist. So, you know, I'm focusing on that. And then let's see what happens. I always believe in life now, you can never really see beyond the next 18 months, 2 years. So I'm greatly enjoying talking about Finding Belle, enjoying writing book 2. Let's see what happens after that.
I mean, you're clearly a creative person, and you know, looking at the cover, it's extremely colourful, and even the image on the front is kind of has double layering of the colours. Was everything intentional, and do you think those colours are clues for how passionate the book is?
That's a really good question. You know, that's the sort of thing that's not entirely in my hands. There is a creative artist at the publisher. Her name is Claire Ward, and she came up with the cover. Now, it is, though, collaborative, so she produced several versions, and we talked about it, and we talked about what best reflected the novel, but it is exactly as you say, the front cover of Mivy looking in several directions. Where is the truth? I think that's sort of wonderful. And the way in which the sort of very vivid saffron orange flock wallpaper, because it starts in the 1970s, you know, the action progresses to the beginning of this century, but it starts in the 1970s, so it's sort of evocative of that period. But there's also the back cover, which has a woman, a grown woman in silhouette looking out of the window, a bird through the window, maybe her thoughts, maybe her longings. And I find that's very evocative as well. So I'm really delighted at what Claire has produced.
It's beautiful, especially the orange is so striking.
Lovely.
As a creative person, do you find writing fiction easier than, say, reporting news, or is it just an adjustment that has come naturally to you?
I would say it's an adjustment that I had to work on. So I really enjoyed doing it. I would say that I wrote fairly fluidly and fluently. I didn't find it difficult, but I did have to let go of certain journalistic practices. So when I mean, of course, journalism is fact and my novel is fiction, but when I write news scripts, I stick to very clear language. My sentences are quite short because you don't have long to, you know, pass over the information to the viewer. Whereas with fiction, you can let yourself go, you can be creative, you can play with language, play with words. And I would say that that took a little bit of time, and I would revise and revise and revise again. You know, my manuscript was refined and polished many times before it was actually published.
And what would you say to someone who sees themselves in the characters of the book? You know, they recognise all the storylines. What would you say to them? Any advice?
Oh, I'd say I would be delighted if people recognised either themselves or other people in the book. If the themes of the novel resonate with them, then I've succeeded. But what I've written is something that is literary. It's also, I don't want to give too much away about the way in which I've written it, but it is quite a literary novel. It is about the importance of storytelling and the importance of the stories we tell ourselves, and how sometimes perhaps it's not possible to tell a story because life is often quite messy, isn't it? And perhaps the way in which we try and control our understanding of life is by making a story out of it. There's something of that going on in Finding Belle.
Definitely. Everyone's life is a story, as you say. And finally, as an experienced and respected journalist, what is some advice you would give to an aspiring journalist? Or even writer?
Well, in both cases, to an aspiring journalist, I would always say yes if you can. You'll find that doors will open that you hadn't necessarily expected to open. Doors might open that you think, oh my goodness, I don't think I'm ready to do that. Just say yes, throw yourself into it, be bold, go for it. And if you experience setbacks, don't worry too much, because everybody fails in the course of a long career. I've had bad times in my career, but you know, if you're conscientious, if you work hard, if you apply yourself, if you try and learn from what you got wrong, then things will work out. And to anyone who is an aspiring writer, I would say just write. A badly written page is better than a blank page, and you can always go back and refine it and polish it, which is exactly what I did with my manuscript. It didn't come out as a fully formed, perfect novel. I worked on it for a long time. So much better to write something that you're not very satisfied with, but you can go back the next day and make it better.
Yeah, and of course in the long run you'll have an end product that you're extremely proud of.
You hope so,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Incredible.